sound. Here we go. I think we're working. We're plugged in now. Hello and welcome back to Great Day Saving Expert. I can't even remember my line now. Anyway, we're going to go through the latest cryptocurrency news today. We're going to take a look at the Bitcoin price and we're going to see what's happening. We've got a couple of news stories to discuss and we're going to take a look at Bitcoin, Ethereum. Bitcoin is trading back above $70,000. Ethereum not performing so well, so we'll take a look at that and some altcoins here today. I want to focus a lot on the charts today, but we do have some news to discuss quickly as well. In fact, let's go through the news first of all today, and then we'll just focus on the Bitcoin price. So first of all, we've got KuCoin is seeing a $1 billion withdrawal in 24 hours following the legal scrutiny. I think we've seen a lot of FUD around this, a lot of fear around this, and off the back of this, users have decided to withdraw their funds. Now, when this happened in 2022 with FTX couldn't hold up with these withdrawals. Now, that's because FTX wasn't doing what it should be doing behind the scene. KuCoin should be able to handle this. It should be no sweat off their back that they are having traders, users withdraw their funds. Hopefully, when this scrutiny is over, when this legal battle is over, people will go back to the exchange and they will have those increased trading volumes once again, and they will be back to normal. Hopefully, it plays out like that and it's just all calm and quiet. I think a lot of people that are in the space now were burnt by the FTX scandal, so we're all very quick to withdraw our funds anytime we see some problems. But now with KuCoin, it seems all good to me. I mean, we can't be certain, but it seems okay. And just because they've had $1 billion withdrawn by users, this shouldn't scare us because they should be able to have those funds readily available to give back to users since it is users' funds. The FTX did not operate in the correct way and that's why they couldn't hold up with all the withdrawals that they saw. This should not be the case for any other exchange. So fingers crossed, KuCoin are all okay, all good, and we continue in a proper manner. And eventually, maybe when this legal stuff is over, users will go back to the platform. Their trading volumes will increase again and they'll be able to continue with that revenue stream that they were making previously. Let's carry on here and see what else is going on. Before we do though, I'll take a look at the live chat today. We've got Jason saying that sound is back. Thank you very much for that. Sorry about that. Rob says, why so early today? I did mention this in Tuesday's stream. I forgot to mention it in yesterday's stream. We are slightly earlier today because I am meeting up with the CSE team today and going through some stuff. So we had to put the stream a little bit earlier. So I hope that's not an issue. Let me know if you like it though. Maybe the earlier streams are the way to go. But let's take a look at this article here. Good morning, Rob. Good morning, Alex. Good morning, Jason and Gregor and Linguini Panini as well. Let's take a look at what's going on here. ETF update, Hashdex enters the fray. GBTC's 10th $100 million plus outflow day. So Wednesday marks the entrance of a new player in the spot Bitcoin ETF market as GBTC outflows top $100 million for the 10th consecutive day. So GBTC is still seeing a huge amount of outflows. It's not necessarily the worst thing in the world. Grayscale can't continue to see these outflows forever. It can't go into negative. Eventually, all the sellers are going to have sold. And I think a lot of you are on my side of opinion when you see this and you're saying, just do it. We'd rather you dump it all now and do it all now than just slowly do it over the next year. We've seen a huge amount of outflows for GBTC, and I'm happy for that to continue until all of those sellers are out of the market, because when they are, we can see the amount of inflows here. If the inflows are sustainable and continue at this rate, we've got no problems here and no doubts here. Let's take a look at what else is going on in this article though. So the conversion process has seen the renaming of the Hashdex Bitcoin Futures ETF to the Hashdex Bitcoin ETF, which will now be identified with the ticker DeFi. A shift signifies DeFi's move towards enabling spot Bitcoin holdings and its adoption of a new benchmark index effective from the 27th of March 2024. The new restructured fund will allocate a minimum of 95% of its assets to spot Bitcoin, with the remaining portion diversified into CME traded Bitcoin futures contracts and cash equivalents. So this isn't just a purely spot Bitcoin ETF. It does have that 5% of its portfolio allocated to futures contracts, but still correlated to the Bitcoin price. In a Bitcoin ETF update, we can see Tuesday witnessed heavy inflows across the board of spot Bitcoin ETFs, with all bar 2 posting greater than $15 million in inflows. Yesterday's trend, Fidelity FBTC, drew the largest inflow. So we're seeing the inflows come back. We had seen a 5 consecutive day streak of outflows, net outflows for the Bitcoin ETFs, meaning more was coming out than was going in. And that was when we were seeing that dip. but we were seeing that traders of these ETFs are being smart with their money. They're not paper handing these assets. We saw a huge amount of money flowing into these ETFs during the dip, and ETF investors are meant to be sophisticated traders, and that's what they've proven to be during this dip. And that's really important for us because we do not want to see paper handers investing into these ETFs. We want to see that they can hold on to a dip and understand the buy the dip opportunity, and that's exactly what's happened here. So this has given me a little bit of confidence because, as we were saying before, we've seen institutional buying, but we haven't seen institutional selling, and that was a concern for me. But they seem to be diamond handing this, buying the dip, and if the institutional investors are strong investors, then that can give us a little bit of confidence there. Let's carry on and see what else is going on here. For those of you that have just joined, we're going through all of the news today, and then we'll go over the Bitcoin price in the end of today's stream, and we'll go into detail about it at that point. We can see here the US court denies Coinbase's motion to dismiss the SEC lawsuit, so the case will now move forward after the ruling. Essentially, the ruling has stated the court finds the SEC has sufficiently pleaded that Coinbase operates as an exchange, as a broker, and as a clearing agency under the federal securities laws, and through its staking program engages in the unregistered offer and sale of securities. So this brings us all back around to what's going on in terms of regulation in the US. The main issue with regulation in the US boils down to the classification of assets and whether assets are securities or commodities. We use the Howey test to determine that. And the SEC regulates securities and the CFTC regulates commodities. The reason there's so much debate right now is because the CFTC are actually saying Ethereum is a commodity, and the SEC is saying it's a security, and that shows that the guidelines to determine which category these assets fall into are not clear. And we've now seen that the courts, first of all, the SEC have created a lawsuit against Coinbase saying they're offering securities, and Coinbase is saying they're not securities. So there's debate over the outcome when using the guidelines to test whether an asset is a security or not. And this is a real big problem. So Coinbase tried to go up against the SEC in court and say, look, we want to dismiss this ruling, it's not right, but the courts have ruled in favour of the SEC, so we're now going to see a whole lawsuit unfold between the SEC and Coinbase, essentially saying that Coinbase are offering securities without registering as a securities exchange. We've seen this debate many, many times before. We saw the SEC create lawsuits against multiple different exchanges in 2023, saying they were operating as unregistered exchanges, and we are now seeing, look, it's going to go ahead versus Coinbase here. So we'll have to see how this plays out, and I think all of these lawsuits are really important. In terms of regulation, we've been pushing the whole subject under the rug for a couple of years now, and in 2023, following the FTX collapse in 2022, we saw the SEC really try and battle the cryptocurrency space and enforce regulation. I don't agree with the way they've gone about it. I don't agree with the way that the regulation is unfolding here, because it's unclear, it's subjective, the guidelines are just not right. So I don't agree with how it's being done right now, but I think the fact that we're seeing these lawsuits and we're seeing the regulators try and comprehend what's going on in the cryptocurrency space in the long term will be a good thing. So what's happening here is the SEC, the regulators in the US, have made a couple of lawsuits against multiple different cryptocurrency companies, and one of those have been Ripple, for example. And in that Ripple lawsuit, we've seen a court case that happened in the middle of the lawsuit state that the SEC were wrong in saying XRP is a security in 3 out of 4 instances. So in 3 out of the 4 ways that it's sold. So this has shown, look, the SEC's guidelines is not clear. If the court can come to a different conclusion than the SEC, it's not clear. We then move on to the Bitcoin ETFs, where the SEC rejected spot Bitcoin ETFs from Grayscale, and then the Grayscale took them to court, and the courts ruled in favor of Grayscale. So although the regulation isn't correct, and we're seeing the SEC lose lawsuits in court around the crypto regulation multiple times, This is helping us develop some regulation in the long term, because eventually the SEC is going to have to create some clearer guidelines that help us determine whether assets are securities or not, and determine how we are going to regulate them. And at the moment, it's kind of like a grey cloud above our heads. All of these cryptocurrency exchanges are trying to operate the best they can, but they're struggling. They are struggling. For Coinbase, for example, Coinbase does not want to list securities on the platform because it is not registered as a securities exchange. So Coinbase said to the SEC before having their IPO, before becoming a public company, we don't know how to classify our assets correctly because the guidelines are not clear. So we've come up with our own framework, and we're going to use this framework, and if an asset fits the bill, we'll list it and assume it's not a security. And if it doesn't, we'll say it's a security and we won't touch it because we don't want to list securities. The SEC knew how Coinbase were classifying their assets. Coinbase had to put a few additional guidelines in place to fully understand the guidelines that are there legally, because the legal guidelines are just not clear. And then eventually last year, the SEC said, Coinbase, you've been classifying these assets wrong. And Coinbase are like, hold on, you knew how we were classifying this the entire time. We've had an IPO. We've launched as a public company since we told you what framework we're using to determine this. And now you're coming for us? How does this make sense? So a huge amount of problems in the crypto space. The SEC have really been targeting the crypto space following FTX. But I do think the final outcome of this will be put crypto in a better space. Because, well, fingers crossed it does, because we are forcing the SEC to make these clearer guidelines through all of these lawsuits that the SEC are creating. Eventually, they will have to make clearer guidelines for the crypto space, and with that, we will understand much more clearly, how to operate as cryptocurrency companies. So it's essentially the test that we use now to determine whether an asset is a security or not is the Howey test. It was created in 1946. It works for traditional assets. It does not work for digital assets, and that's the problem there. So we'd like to see some new guidelines be created. The SEC have said the guidelines are there and they do not need to be changed. It's just because the crypto people don't like them. But that is entirely untrue, because how can the SEC come to a different conclusion to the court if you can use some guidelines to get to a different conclusion than to your neighbor? Then the guidelines are not clear. It's as simple as that. So that's what's been happening in the US in terms of regulation, but the SEC are pushing forwards here with their case against Coinbase, so we will see how this plays out. As I said, I think this is just some of the headwinds. Eventually we will battle through, and we will get clear guidelines and clear regulation. And I think a lot of people think that people in crypto are against the regulation, and that's not it. We're against we're against confusing regulation that does not fit the bill. It's like trying to put a puzzle piece into the last piece of the puzzle that does not fit. And we want regulation, but we just need it to be clear. And then we can start to build companies and push things forwards. But when things are unclear and you're just basically facing a lawsuit at any point in time, it's hard for these exchanges to grow. So that's what's been happening in the crypto space. I could rant about this all day. So I will finish on that article there. Let's see what's going on in the chat here. Rob says, how long can you see this case dragging on for? Do you think it will hamper the altcoins? To be honest, it could go on for years, but not at all. In 2023, we saw the SEC create multiple different lawsuits against multiple different exchanges. And within these exchanges, they listed like 20, 30 altcoins as securities and said, look, these exchanges are listing and offering users unregistered securities, and therefore the exchanges are operating as unregistered securities exchanges. So we saw a number of tokens being labeled as securities by the SEC. The initial reaction in the markets were, we should dump a little bit. A small percentage, and then after that they all seemed to pump and go back to normal, and they just performed maybe just a little bit less than they would have done without that lawsuit, but nothing outrageous. They were performing like the rest of the market. So I don't think the SEC labeling tokens as securities has a massive effect on the markets. We also saw this with Ethereum last week. We saw the SEC maybe going after the Ethereum Foundation, labeling Ethereum as a security, and Ethereum had a little dump to begin with, but then it's gone about its normal day. So I'm not too concerned about the impact on the altcoins here, unless we get some new guidelines that come in that do affect the cryptocurrency space. But in the current positions, the cryptocurrency markets do not care what Gary Gensler and the SEC have to say about whether an asset is a security or not. And we've seen that in the markets over and over again. Let's see what else is going on here. Alex Bell says, didn't the XRP lawsuit rule that crypto sold on a secondary exchange is a commodity, not a security? This was a interim, I want to say. It was a court case in the middle of the lawsuit, so we can't. Yes, it was brilliant. Yes, it was amazing, but that was a solo instance, and yes, we still need to see that develop across the cryptocurrency space. So in that courtroom, the judge decided that in 3 of the 4 instances, so in 3 of the 4 scenarios where XRP is sold, it is not deemed to be a security. So those 4 instances were when XRP was given to the founders, when it was given to Ripple employees as like a bonus scheme, when it was sold on exchanges, and when it was sold to institutional investors. I think that's the 4 scenarios. And on 3 of the 4 scenarios, it was deemed that XRP was not a security, which is a big win for the crypto space. We've seen XRP and the CEO, Gary Garlinghouse, Gary Garlinghouse, and no, that's not his name. Brad Garlinghouse, is it? I said that with so much confidence. Brad Garlinghouse, I'm pretty sure. Let's check that. Brad Garlinghouse, here he is. This is the guy, Gary. I got Gary Getstar and Brad Garlinghouse mixed up. They're not two to get mixed up. Brad Garlinghouse has been fighting for cryptocurrency regulation across the board, not just for XRP. During this Ripple lawsuit, he's been pushing for clearer guidelines to determine whether assets are securities or commodities, and not just pushing for XRP to get out of this lawsuit. So it's been a really positive move forward, but the lawsuit's still not over. So with that, we've still got to see this battle continue on. Let's take a look at what else is going on in the crypto space, though, because you all know I could speak about the SEC and the regulation in the US forever. Let's take a look at what's going on here. So the sell-side ratio risk ratio hit 3-year high as Bitcoin broke above 73k. Bitcoin saw significant value realization as it broke 73k last week, breaching the 0.75% sell-side risk threshold. 4 Bitcoin ETFs secure top spots in Bloomberg's global ETF asset raise. Brilliant. Solana's DeFi landscape matures with significant growth in liquidity and lending sectors. We've seen Solana's transaction volumes increase massively over the last couple of months. And interestingly, in yesterday's stream, we saw that 70% of stablecoin users on Solana use USDC, which is really interesting over USDT. And we've also got here Bitcoin CEX trading volume hits record high in March. So Bitcoin's March volatility has mirrored by a surge in trading activity, with Binance accounting for over half of the centralized exchange trading volumes. So it skyrocketed to heights not seen since May 2021. From September 2023 to March 2024, the volume leaped 8-fold, paralleling a dramatic price rally from 34k to 73k. Yet, despite a price correction, the trading fervor refused to wane. So seeing nice trading volumes here. Let's take a look at what's going on in the chat here quickly. Greg says, hi Jess, which on-ramp can we use in the UK? Swissborg is offline and my Tap app is stuck in change address mode November 23. I've tried the Yield app. It's really slow for deposits and slow buys. Do you know what? You've just named all 3 that I was going to say. So Swissborg have stopped UK users from withdrawing. No, you can withdraw. You cannot deposit fiat or cryptocurrency into your Swissborg accounts right now. Hopefully this is fixed in the future. Alternatives that, to be honest, I've not used an alternative yet. I was a Swissborg user through and through. And the news came out this week. I've not looked at too many alternatives. I have used the Tap app before. It's been fun for me. And the other one that I've seen a lot of the team talking about is the Yield app as well. I've not actually personally tried it myself. In terms of more, if you're I think you're a CSE user, go into the Discord and ask in there, because I'm sure a lot of people will have some recommendations there. It's a good team of people there, but I don't have some advice from myself, unfortunately. But I'm sure a lot of people in the CSE Plus Discord do, and I will get some of the team to reply to that as well if they've got any suggestions. Let's carry on here and take a look at what's going on in the Bitcoin price though. Thank you everybody for tuning in. As always, please don't forget to like, subscribe and hit the bell notification button so you don't miss the latest cryptocurrency news. Let's go into dark mode here. I don't like when it goes into light mode. Let's take a look through the Bitcoin chart here, and we've got some time here to go through what's happening and see what's going on in the markets right now. It's been a volatile couple of days in the cryptocurrency space. Right now we have I thought I hadn't pressed. No, I couldn't have then. We have 18 people watching on YouTube right now and only 15 likes. So please make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that bell notification button. Let's see what's going on for the Bitcoin price here. Let's put the Bitcoin halving events in. Here we go. Oh, I've put it in 3 times. So let's take a look on the bigger scale. What's happening here? So let's go to the 1 month. And we can see Bitcoin has been pumping significantly here. We have seen a pullback, but on the monthly chart, you cannot see that at all. We've been on a nice movement to the upside. In fact, we're best going to the Bitstamp chart instead. So you can see where we are in the markets right now. We have created a new all-time high, earlier than expected, but we are still moving pretty nicely to the upside. The Bitcoin halving is in 24 days, expected to be on the 22nd of April. So let's get that in on the daily chart. 22nd of April. There we go. So that's what we're looking at there. In terms of liquidations on the heat map, we are so close to liquidating a huge amount of trade. In fact, we've just done it. We've literally just done it while I've been on this stream. So let's take a look on the bigger time frames and see if we've got any key liquidation points here. We all know we've got that one down at 33, but to be honest, look, it's looking like it's getting weaker. On the 3-monther, I don't think we have too many key liquidation levels to be watching out for in terms of magnets for the Bitcoin price. Nothing to be concerned about here. So we don't need to worry about that too much. One thing we should be aware of is that the fear and greed index is in 80, so that is in extreme greed, and that is a little bit of a bearish signal, but we need to get used to these higher numbers. Now we are in this parabolic run. Bitcoin has these from time to time, and even though the fear and greed index is high, doesn't mean that Bitcoin's going to slow down. Let's take a look at what's going on here, because I think this is really interesting what's happening, and I've come to a conclusion out of the theses that I've been sharing within the last couple of weeks, so the last couple of days. So in the last 2 halvings, we have seen a dramatic price dump. If we take a look at this halving here, you can see we dumped significantly, about 40%. And this dump started around 22 days prior to the halving. Now, if we go to the next halving, you can see that we had another dump, and this dump was 20%. And this happened 3 days before the halving. Now, what we've seen here is that we have dumped, if we pull this from here to here, 39 days before the halving. And I'm not calling this the pre-halving dip. The reason that we have a dip pre-halving is everybody thinks Bitcoin halvings are a super bullish event, and they would be right. In the long term, it is super bullish. We are seeing the inflation rate being cut in half when we look at supply and demand. If only 450 Bitcoin are added into circulation every day instead of 900, that's bullish in the long term. As long as the demand increases and the supply is going down, we can see some nice price action to the upside. Now, with this, I think that with this bullish momentum that comes with the Bitcoin halvings, we do see some bearish momentum in the short term every single time. Now, there are 2 scenarios that could be playing out here, and I want to show this again today. So we've had this dip here, and it could be that this is the pre-halving dip, slightly shifted to the left earlier than anticipated, or it could be that this is just a dip on the way up, and we will get another dip closer to that Bitcoin halving. And that would mean, if it were to fall into the typical couple time frame, we're looking at around next week to see another dip. Now, for that, I think we would need to see a kind of a significant rally to the upside within the next couple of days. I think there is a scenario that could play out here, and this is the scenario that I'm leaning towards, in that this is the pre-halving dip. It's shifted to the left. Everyone knew that halvings were bearish for the short term, so they started taking profits early. And now we could be in for some nice movements here. And I am standing by this more and more as time goes on, as we hold these positions. If we create a new all-time high within the next week or so, we could see some nice price movements here, and it could be that was the pre-halving dip that we were waiting for. If we take a look at what's going on here, you can see we did have some sort of descending support there and a descending resistance here, creating a channel, and we have managed to break to the upside of that and moving significantly to the upside. If we do have a pullback and retest this down at $69,500, then that would be incredible to see. We would like to see some levels of resistance being used as supports along the way. I personally don't see this of this pullback as a bearish thing at all. I love to see consolidation. Pullbacks are what we need to see the price get some support. This kind of price action is not healthy. This is not something we can sustain for the long term. And when we do see some nice price action to the upside, we do need to see some consolidation. We do need to see some pullbacks. Otherwise, when we do get a pullback, it can be horrendous. And we see that with altcoins all the time. When some altcoins pump to the moon, you know that they can come down very quickly because they have no levels of support. They have not seen any consolidation. So it's important to see this consolidation and these pullbacks along the way. If we take a look at what's going on the 4-hour chart, you can see that we have created a double bottom here. And that's really good to see. That is really good to see. And we did have some level of resistance here, but we managed to break through that and use that as a level of support. So the price is getting stronger and stronger by the day, and that's brilliant. So fingers crossed it continues on that path and we do continue to see this bullish momentum. We also had a level of resistance here and a previous level of support here that has been bounced. So we're seeing bounce after bounce using levels of support that we had not seen yet. So the Bitcoin price to me is looking really, really strong. So we'll have to see how this plays out throughout the next couple of days. I'm keeping a close eye on this. I'm really interested to see how this plays out over the Bitcoin halving, because if over the Bitcoin halving we see a typical dump, then we will need to reassess what's happening here. But right now, if we just see the price of Bitcoin move to the upside throughout this dump, that would be the path of most pain, because a lot of people are waiting for the pre-halving dip. And with that, we could conclude that yes, the markets have taken this shift to the left because we've seen that dump earlier than expected again. So I think that would be the most interesting play right now. Whether that happens, I don't know. Maybe we will get a second dip and we will have that pre-halving dip. But I think it'd be really interesting if we don't, because that would really put some more strong data into the fact that we have shifted to the left. The bull market's going to be more condensed and it's going to be quicker than expected. And then we can kind of go off that analysis. So far, we've only had one factor to show that, which is the all-time high being earlier than expected. If we get the pre-halving dump to be earlier than expected and then don't see another one over the halving, that would be the second piece of data, and that gives us some solid evidence here to kind of back that thesis. But right now, I'm really waiting to see how this plays out. If we get another dip over the halving, then we can't be as certain there. But that's all we really have time for today. We can go over Ethereum's price quickly here. You can see that has similarly had a significant pullback. It has started to have a nice bounce to the upside, but it is being tested here by a level of resistance that it can't seem to break through. If we take a look at the Ethereum Bitcoin chart, it's performing terribly. Ethereum is being outperformed by Bitcoin dramatically. It's now down at 0.05. This is shocking. This is not what we were expecting to see. In previous cycles, just before the Bitcoin halving, this chart seems to bottom out and we start to see Ethereum outperform Bitcoin and altcoins perform well. I think the reason for this is because we are not in altcoin season just yet. If you take a look at the Bitcoin dominance chart, you can see, let's try that again, BTCD. What you can see here is Bitcoin dominance usually falls starting from a couple of months pre-halving and then falls dramatically during that altcoin season. We've not seen that yet. Bitcoin dominance is growing from strength to strength, and that is because, in my opinion, Bitcoin ETFs have removed the barrier to entry for Bitcoin, but they have not removed the barrier to entry for cryptocurrency and altcoins. So with that, the Bitcoin dominance is high. Now, I'm personally not actually expecting as big of a drop to the downside during this bull market and for the dominance than we've seen in previous cycles. I'm expecting, yes, the dominance could drop as people start to cycle their profits into separate altcoins, into the high cap coins, mid cap coins, low cap coins, and we will see that typical cycle. But I think the Bitcoin dominance can hold a little bit more strong than it has done in previous cycles, because you can see it lost a significant percentage last time around. But I don't think that will be the case since, first of all, people that have invested into ETFs don't yet have the tools to cycle their profits into the rest of the cryptocurrency market. So if they want exposure to crypto, they stick to those Bitcoin ETFs. And secondly, because Bitcoin doesn't have that barrier to entry, we could continue to see the inflows into Bitcoin at parts of the cycle where we would typically see that money flow into other assets. So that's why I think the dominance could hold strong this time. I do still think there will be an altcoin season, and with that, we will see the dominance drop slightly. I just don't think it will be as significant, but we will have to see how that plays out. But that's all we really have time for today. So thank you very much for tuning in. As always, I hope you have enjoyed. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell notification button so you you don't miss the latest cryptocurrency news. That's all from me today, and I will see you back here tomorrow. Thank you and goodbye.